I actually just got done finishing filming a documentary with Prager University about masculinity. And one of the people that I interviewed was John Gray. He wrote the book, Boys Are from Mars, Women Are from Venus. And he talked about this one experiment. I forget the name of it. It was like this rat experiment. But he essentially related it to the breakdown of the gender roles. And when you talk about depopulation, he talked about this, that how...
The Utopia experiment?
Maybe. Yes, yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, we talked about that one a bit.
Yeah, and so, and the breakdown of the gender roles and how men and women aren't interacting as much. There was recently this Pew Research poll that showed that men aren't dating anymore, women aren't, the dating in women are down. But, he talked about how our homosexual population is also growing and how that's contributing to depopulation. So I don't know to what scale, but I thought that was interesting what John Gray brought up. And,
well, this is interesting because we've talked about, it's like the mouse utopia or the rat utopia experiment. Basically, this dude put a bunch of mice in this big space and gave them all the food and water they could want, and then just left. Like, there you go, utopia, everything you'd ever want. And eventually, their society broke down. Some became aggressive. Some stopped procreating. There were some, they were called the beautiful ones. Shane Cashman wrote about this, beautiful ones of Universe 25. That they would just groom themselves all day and just make themselves look prettier and prettier.
But they won't mate. They're just obsessed with themselves.
They won't mate, but the male rats will still have sex.
Well, they would like all cluster in one room together. Like their social order broke down. They just stopped functioning properly, and then eventually they all died. And it sounds a lot like what we're seeing now. Like there is a limit to live and let live, I guess. Like, obviously, fascism is bad, okay? People need to have freedom and leeway to live their lives and be productive. But then if you get to the point where you're like, you literally don't care that adult entertainers are putting on children's shows, like adult entertainment for kids is bad, obviously. But the left, the liberals, they're cheering for it. It's like, okay, I think we're entering the rat utopia phase where our society ceases to exist. I guess the difference is we can see it and we know the results of these experiments. So I think... worst case scenario, society breaks down completely. People become aggressive and start killing each other, which kind of seems like it's happening. And then preppers who are active, pay attention and read, build bunkers, ranches, and then humans are they end up fine in the long run.
Yeah.
We get through this.
I think you see people withdraw from society, right? I mean, you talk about this all the time, leaving cities. We know a lot of people who switched to homeschooling during the pandemic. They decide that they don't want to be a part of the society, so they sort of, as much as possible, withdraw. Especially, it's not totally possible. You still use the grocery store. Your kids still have friends who go to public school, that kind of stuff. But they actively choose to try and put distance between them and what are signs of society's collapse.
Yeah, well, it's what you said, Tim, about in the beginning about having everything, and the convenience culture has evolved to the point where we don't need human relationships. We have everything we need. We don't need, relationships to gratify our sexual urges, which is very innate in us. We have pornography. We don't need to make our own food. We have Uber Eats, and we just have grocery stores where we pick it off the shelves. We don't have danger to make us need physical fitness and endurance and, fighting off dangers. We literally don't need each other anymore, and that is killing us.
Dude. You want to hear something really crazy? I make millions of dollars complaining about bullshit on the internet. And I am astounded every single day because I grew up in a place where it was like, if you don't work, you don't eat. And I'm in the city. It's like I would play guitar in the subway when I'm basically borderline homeless because I'm like, I'm going to find a way to make money. Otherwise, I'm not eating. And that's what you had to do. And now I'm at a point where it's like, turn the camera on, complain, people listen, and you make money doing it. I'm not saying that to be self-deprecating for the most part. I'm saying we have as a society gotten to the point where there are people who don't actually work and they live like kings. This is the craziest thing. Like, we're all kings now. This is not feasible in the long run. It is not a viable way for human society to function. That right now there are people whose hands are covered their hands are calloused. And every day they're lifting things, they're constructing things, and they make substantially less than a BuzzFeed writer. There is a person who works at BuzzFeed. Well, not anymore. They're replacing it with AI, which is going to get even worse, I guess. Or maybe better. Maybe people will be forced to start working again. But there are people who work in the corporate press who show up to work in the morning and they're like, what should we do today? You can call Trump a Nazi. And they're like, okay, yeah, I'll do that. And then they make $90,000 a year. Meanwhile, people at home listening are like, I drove a car around for 12 hours, doing deliveries, and I made $50 to $100. How can a society function when you have working class, actual working class people who work, and then you have the elite ruling class and corporate press that do nothing and extract 10 times the value from the system. Now that is a recipe for disaster, in my opinion. That can't sustain itself.